the county attorney issued a statement. It reads, Christopher Sholtes accepted a plea agreement and pled guilty to 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of intentional/knowing child abuse under circumstances likely to cause death or serious physical injury. Under the terms of the plea, the sentences imposed by the judge are going to run consecutively, and Sholtes will face a sentencing range of 20 to 30 years of flat time, meaning he's not eligible for early release. He must serve the full sentence imposed by the court in the Department of Corrections for murdering PS on July 9th, 2024. We are grateful for the hard work and dedication of our prosecutors, victim advocates, staff for their collaboration with local law enforcement on this complicated and high-profile case. This is yet another reminder to the community that the Pima County Attorney's Office will do everything we can to get justice for victims and prosecute those who have caused harm to others, especially those who are most vulnerable. Sholtes was supposed to be sentenced later this month. Then came word that he didn't show up for court, and he was found dead. So joining me to discuss this really tragic development in this case is Dwane Cates. He's a certified specialist in criminal law with the Arizona State Bar, longtime criminal defense attorney. Dwane, this is a tragedy. Christopher Sholtes, Sholtes was going to prison likely for 30 years for the death of his daughter, Parker, a beautiful little girl. I just don't understand sometimes in cases like this. I get it. He had been free on bail the entire time. He may have been safer, though, in county jail, pending sentencing. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Arizona has a rule called Rule 7.2. And if you plead guilty to a charge that requires you to go to prison, it's kind of mandatory that you go into custody. Now, the only time that doesn't happen is if the prosecutor and the defense attorney both agree and the judge agrees to waive 7.2, then the person can stay out. But more times than not, a person is taken into custody if they enter into a plea that requires prison for this very reason.
Because there's a fear that something could happen. Maybe the person does something.
Disappears, runs off, goes to another country, is found deceased in the ocean. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not entirely shocked by this development. I mean, it's a horrific case. When you look back at the body camera footage, obviously, Christopher Sholtes did not do this on purpose. He did not do this on purpose, but he neglected his duties as a dad, quite clearly. He admitted to abusing his daughter by leaving her out in that hot car. And this was not a one-off.
Yeah.
He had done this 50 times or so before. He had repeatedly left this beautiful little girl in the car. Typically, he would leave her in the garage, but the Peloton bike was in there that day. And so he left her in the driveway to sleep in the middle of the summer in July. And he's in the house playing video games and stuff, and she's out there for 3 hours. So, it's just a horrific case. I know he didn't do it on purpose, but a little girl died. I mean, it's just horrific.
Yeah, and what makes it really bad is that he'd done it numerous times before. And the email or the text message from his wife is really damning, where it's like, dang it, I told you not to leave the kids in the car. I've told you 100 times, very emphatically that she had been telling him not to do that. Okay. And so he can't say, sometimes people are in a rush and they grab the groceries and they go in the house and they forget the child. That's not this case. He left the child there intentionally, and he apparently does it all the time.
And that's what's so upsetting about this case, is that he didn't learn. He didn't learn his lesson. I mean, anything could happen if you leave a child in a car. I mean, somebody can steal the car. Somebody could snatch the child.
Yeah.
Any number of things could happen, Dwane.
Well, you got to keep in mind, this is Arizona too. So in the middle of July, it's hot. I mean, it's 115, 120 degrees outside sometimes. So, you just can't leave anybody in the car. You can't leave a dog, anything. So, and again, there's various reports that maybe he was in, playing video games and looking at porn or whatever, and if those are the facts, then had he gone to trial, he would have got life in prison. Okay, so the plea agreement was going to let him get out. I think between 20 and 30 years is what the plea called for. And so, and again, he looks to be, in his 30s, so that was almost essentially a life in prison sentence.
Most definitely. And I said earlier, in the show, the rest of his life was going to be a miserable, miserable existence. He was going to walk into prison as somebody who did this. He wasn't going to be looked upon in a nice way among the other inmates in the prison. And, you left your daughter in a car to die while you were doing this stuff on the internet and playing video games. So life was going to be pretty miserable for him in prison. And he had a really nice life. He was a stay-at-home dad while
Yeah.
his wife was at work. She was a physician. So he had a pretty nice life. And then he was going to be walking into prison for likely 30 years. I think the judge was going to
Yeah.
throw the book at him.
Well, and to think about it this way, in Arizona, okay, there are different yards where you get placed in prison. Okay. Now, if he were a child molester, okay, he would go to a sex yard, which is way better than the other yards. But because he had a second degree murder conviction that was dangerous crimes against children, he most likely was going to go to a 4 yard, which is the maximum security yard, just below the death penalty and death row. And he's going to be put in there with some really bad guys that don't like the fact that a child got killed, and so he was going to have a really rough life.
This seemed like a major error, though, on the part of the courts. It seems like a bad miscalculation, on the part of the defense, the prosecution, and the judge, in my opinion, because we've seen this type of thing happen, in other cases where somebody takes off, somebody decides to end it because they're not going to go to prison for the rest of their life. So, do you think that judges will be more hesitant after
Yeah.
seeing this to agree to that in the future?
And generally, when stakes are this high, the person isn't let go. I mean, that's generally speaking. And I think because his wife probably spoke highly of him at the bond reduction hearing, the hearing to get him out. Okay. And I think that probably played into it. But in most cases where you're pleading to second degree murder, you're not going home from the change of plea hearing. You're going to jail. And and again, all that has to happen is if the prosecutor would have said, I'm not willing to waive 7.2, then they would have had to have put him in jail. Okay, because the state had to agree to do that. If they didn't do that, then the judge has no choice because the statute basically says shall, and some judges read it that you can't even that you can't waive it. Okay, I've had judges tell me that. Some most will if everybody agrees, but generally not on a second degree murder case.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, it's sad for his other children because now they're going to grow up without a father at all. At
Yeah.
least they may have been able to speak with him on the phone or the prison tablet or something like that. But now they're not going to be able to ever speak with their father again. It
Yeah.
really is a tragedy. But I hope that the courts will take notice of this and see that they should have just taken him into custody right then and there after the guilty plea. Um, Dwane Cates, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so
Oh, no
much.
problem. Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Anytime.
And we'll continue to follow this case for you. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me for this episode of Crime Fix. I'll see you back here next time.